Hi, and welcome back to Postscript. I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and we're happy to have you back with us. We do this on a regular basis, as you may know, if you follow our series. About every month, we have a speaker that we invite in from somewhere in the world to talk about the kind of the fringy, interesting edge of where things are going in this world. And it's part of our series called Berkeley Springs Transition Talks. And we're pleased to have with us this week Mary Rodwell from Australia. And we talked a good bit in the first segment that you'll want to go back and visit about the whole business of aliens and UFOs and interactions with humans with them. And it turns out that it's a very, very real thing. This is not far-fetched science fiction, as former government officials in the United States just recently, as a matter of fact, just a week or so ago, are now coming forward and saying this is a very real thing and needs to be dealt with. Mary is one of the foremost researchers in the world in this area. Her background is in nursing and counseling, and she has had counseling sessions and therapy sessions with over 3,000 people who have all had experiences of one sort or another with extraterrestrials of one sort or another. She's the author of the book, The New Human, and we welcome you, and thanks for being with us again.
It's a pleasure, John.
So talk to us about this new human. What we suggested in the first segment was that this interaction with these non-human entities are probably part of a larger kind of strategy or a trend or a plan or something, and to kind of open human beings up to something else. What we mentioned and talked about was the likelihood and all of the multiple sources that suggest that there have been these kind of interventions in genetic engineering, if you will, and that humans are kind of hybrids and we're all come from somewhere else, and we've been encouraged and augmented by extraterrestrials at some level or another, and so it's all going somewhere, right? We're expanding the species in somewhat. What's happening is the emergence of a new human almost. So what does that mean to you?
Well, was the big, million-dollar question is, what's this all about? Why are they interacting with humans? And it appears to be through millennia interacting with us. And what was fascinating for me, apart from what is mostly out there, is this misconception everything is traumatic. And certainly people are traumatized, and many have been terrified for some of the time until they begin to understand more of what's been going on for them. And as you explore it and as they've explored it, they discover that there's a program, many programs, multi-complex, many-layered programs. First of all, there's more than one species that are working often together. So there seems to be different skills for different species of non-human intelligence. And they are interacting together with different genetic lines. And what was fascinating for me was not only was these individuals looked after. Often they said, I could have died and something happened and I was saved from either drowning or a car accident. Something saved me. The interesting thing is, why were they saved? And they would often find out it was one of these non-human intelligences that had been interacting with them. So they were important. That was the first thing that came out. But not only that, why are they educating them on board craft?
Right.
Why are the children being taken and adults being taken? I've had numerous letters from adults as well as parents with children saying, I know physics. I've been taught higher physics on board craft at 3 and 4 years old, and I remember it. And I've never needed to really go to uni and learn about it because I already knew it. And this is not just physics, downloads of a lot of scientific information, cosmological information of the true origin of the species. So all the things, a multi-layer of if you like, educational syllabus that have
Sure.
been brought to them. They're also taught how to use abilities. They're taught how to use their intuitive abilities, their psychic abilities. Many of them find they're precognitive. In other words, they can see the future. They also notice that some are taught how to levitate and use their third eye. So why would they be teaching
Right.
individuals on that level to do all these kinds of things? To me, it was, so what is the program? Program seems to be certainly an educational upgrade, and also a multidimensional upgrade, because after they've had these experiences, they notice they can see a broader range of visual spectrum. They often see energy fields, for example, around people. They become a lot more intuitive. Many of them feel they can be telepathic, that you know, they can actually pick up on other people's thoughts, for example, this kind of thing. They may suddenly find they have healing abilities, and that they get drawn into healing,
Right.
energy work, and this kind of thing. So all their multidimensional self seems to be expanded through these experiences, including some of them intellectual abilities as well. They find become a lot more intelligent and what have you. So what is this for?
Yeah.
What is it all about? For me, that was what they were asking, but so was I as a researcher. What does this all mean? Why are we being assisted on those multi-levels to understand a greater, if you like, an understanding of a greater reality or multiverse which they're exposed to? And we're talking about dimensions, parallel universes, different timelines,
Wow.
all these kinds of things that they may experience through their interactions with these beings. As they become more comfortable, it appears that they are exposed to more and more of this reality, which again makes it extremely difficult to deal with 3D, where you're taught, unless it's, you know, solid and you can see it and hear it and feel it and sense, you know, that it's not real.
Right.
And they're being exposed to a multiverse where they are aware of dimensions and timelines and
So
parallel
are they
universe.
the new humans?
They are the new humans, the ones that are, if you like, assisted to become aware and upgraded into awareness of our multidimensional nature rather than just the 3D biological system.
Well, if you just tuned in and you just heard Mary talk about that, and you hadn't heard our first segment, you might say, what in the world, and how crazy is this? What do you mean new humans and telepathic and everything like that? And if that's where you come from, let me suggest to you to go to a TED Talk. There's a marvelous TED Talk by a biologist and a geneticist who is an investor in companies like this, who goes to TED Talks are 18 minutes,
Yes.
right? And he goes through 17 and a half minutes of talking about all these different kind of things that are happening in genetics. And in the last 30 seconds, he says, and so a new human is emerging, and your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren are going to be different version of the species. And I mean, this is kind of mainline, this is not woo-woo,
interesting.
strange
Yes.
kind of things.
Yes.
And so not only are you seeing this kind of idea that's emerging out of conventional science, but it is also coming from unconventional space, if you will. And so there's something really substantial that's happening here. One of the things that we work with at the Arlington Institute is around the concept of the emergent new human and a new world that emerges out of that as the human beings change their mind and their perspective and so on. And so what's this new human, if you could kind of, in a paragraph, say, what do they look like? What do they do?
Well, they look exactly like us, and they're our children. And these children are different. And we, you know, the metaphysical terms, they call them indigos, crystals,
Right.
children of light. You know, they've got lots of names for them because they are recognizing they're different. But I add to that ADHD, Asperger's, dyslexia, some forms of autism, as without question, it appears the exponential increase in all those so-called dysfunctions
Right.
is in fact not a dysfunction.
No.
I believe we're the old model.
That's right, yeah.
And they are the new human.
They're plugging into this thing.
That's right.
And the society is not supporting them, and we say there's something wrong with them,
That's
that
right.
they're the new emergent kind of version.
Yeah, because their awareness is in fact far more multidimensional than ours is. So they operate differently, because when we're seeing things through one eye, they're seeing things through both eyes. And the interesting thing is that they seem to even have the sense of synesthesia, where they're understanding or seeing a color and hearing it, or a perception of if you like, a multidimensional way of interpreting their reality. And when you talk to them, when you talk to the ADHDs, for example, they seem to be operating on a faster speed of reality. And one wonderful gentleman in Hong Kong who told me, I found I was ADHD at the age of 50 and wrote the book Close Encounters of the ADHD Kind, said, Mary, I always saw reality in an expanded way, and I thought there was something wrong with me. And he retranslated ADHD as always dialed into higher dimensions, because he is, and they are. And if you talk to them, they will explain how everything is so pedestrian, so slow, and they get frustrated at school because it's all so not relevant to them in the way that they operate.
Well, part of what you're describing is Generation Z, which is the new cohort, the new generation coming in, and the leading edge of them are about 20 years old right now. And there's interesting things about them. 60% of them say their principal objective in life is to make the world better. And if you look at crime statistics across the United States, over the last 8 years, the crimes of young people have been decreased 50% across the country, and in some places like California and New York, it's gone down 75%. And so you got to say to yourself, what in the world is going on here? There's a fundamental shift that's happening. There's a new generation of kids coming in who see the world in quite a different way. It manifests and shows up in the baseline kind of statistics about how they interact with our society. But what you're describing is kind of the granular kind of essence of that, why they look, why they not look, but why they behave differently and see the world differently.
They come in with an ecological message. Many of them come in and say, one little boy told me that he sees angels and he's come to help people connect to their angels. Another young 8-year-old told me that he communicates with animals and he wants to help the humanity understand how important they are and that we have to treat them in the right way. Others are coming in with ecological messages. One young man told me he comes from Arcturus and he's come as an ecological engineer, and he's come to create new habitat for this planet that is in harmony with the planet. And he's, this is where I come from. And he is already doing that. He's creating information and understanding. So this is what we're getting. You normally don't get a 17-year-old telling you that.
But you get these kids that come in that have all these abilities and I mean, this goes to, previous lives and things like that, but there's a young jazz musician by the name of what's his name? I'll think about it here in a minute. But he's 14 years old, and he plays piano like he's a 35-year-old, Thelonious Monk or something like. Joey Alexander is his name. And you say, where did these people come from? How do they know this? And it's almost as though kind of the species is being seeded by these new capabilities to help it kind of work its way into this new emergent kind of world.
That's exactly what I'm seeing. And when I talk to the children particularly, and why I find them so fascinating, is that they've not been programmed out of their awareness. And because of that, they're quite honest. This is conscious memory, where they talk about going to other planets. They'll talk about their planet of origin. I had one young man of 9 tell me he came from Orion. He was a light physicist working on time travel technology and had come to this planet, and the scientists were really dumb here because they really didn't get it, and the nearest was Nikola Tesla.
I've got some people he needs to meet. I mean, I can fix him up, okay.
But he relates to Nikola Tesla because,
Yeah,
of course,
sure.
I think he was one of the upgrades.
Yeah, sure.
Because he was vegetarian, he got a lot of visions, he got a lot of his information in visions and what have you. And this is how these children are getting the downloads, downloads of information and science, as well as the adults that are being given to us to assist this planet to really heal itself.
So
for
where
us.
are we going? Where is this all happening? What is this? Where's it go?
The big $1 million one again. I believe that we're being assisted by these non-human intelligences, not only to transform into a more aware, mature species of human, so that we can join the galactic community, because at the moment we're a little bit too aggressive and a little bit too primitive.
Yeah.
But I think they're doing,
Your kind, right, yeah.
but I think we're being assisted to reach a point where we can become galactic citizens. And so we really have to sort ourselves out and realize that we're all connected, and that these new children are the way showers. They're educating us into a new way of being, and through interacting with them, that will change us. And I believe that we need a new way of supporting them, which is to allow them to teach us what we need to know.
How might that work? How in the world of the internet and other kind of things, are there places where they kind of congregate and they talk about what they know? Or how do you, I mean, if you don't have a grandchild like this,
Yes.
and you're not a therapist and they show up at your door, I mean, how do you find out about this stuff?
Well, I think the internet's been useful because there are those that are connecting with one another, even the teenagers, and I do a lot of that. I connect teenagers that say, I can't talk to anyone in my community, my parents don't understand, who can I talk to? And I can connect them to other children or teenagers like themselves. But I do believe that I've talked to educators that are also people that have had experiences that say we've got to find a new way to educate these children, and one of them's created a curriculum that she's developed for these new children. We have to look at education in a completely different way, because this is about them telling us what they most need.
Well, sure, we need to have some kind of a mechanism that will allow that to
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
In something other than kind of a formal, structured
Yes.
kind of way. And I'm wondering if there's a website, or whether they all get together in a blog or some other kind of thing where you could. How could you accelerate or facilitate that? How do you find out about all this wisdom? I mean,
Yeah.
if this little physics, the light physics kid you're talking about, has got something to say, I've got people who would love to hear about that.
Yeah. I think there is mechanisms in place with those that are having these experiences where they're connecting together and what have you. And slowly educators, I'm being contacted by educators all over the world that are saying, we're recognizing these kids, and teachers that are aware are recognizing these children. And they're actually saying, we know we have to find a new way now. And so there is a movement, if you like, that's slowly expanding globally, that is looking at this and looking at new ways. And I've talked about the same thing, like an awakening center, where you can assist the adults to come to terms with their new way of being, but also to provide for the children new ways of helping them expand on their abilities, to feel supported, to be understood. Because the parents write to me and say, my child is explaining, they're going up on craft, they're learning this, what do I do? And I say, the first thing you do is you listen.
Yeah.
You listen to them, because they need to know they're okay. They need to know that despite the fact that they can't talk about this necessarily at school, that you are there with them and that you understand. So this is what I get from the parents, is how can I best support them? And the reason I wrote The New Human is because there's at least, half the chapters are on the children's experiences, how they understand reality, how they have come in with a mission and a purpose. They've got a job to do here. They know they've come with a job to do. And this job is to help humanity. And they're bringing in all this new awareness that is assisting the rest of us to understand.
So where are we going? What do they say about the evolution of humanity, this period of time, our kind of near future? What are they talking about in those kinds of terms?
And that's a very good question. And a lot of them, adults as well as children, are sensing a shift in consciousness, a transition, if you like.
So what does that mean?
It means, to me at least, that what we are doing is we're waking up and being activated. And when I mean activated, I've always wondered about the anomalies in our DNA and the fact that, you know, we only use 5% of you know, our DNA. The rest of it they considered junk litter, and they've never fully understood it. We only use a tenth of our brain capacity, for example. What is that? Why has nature created something where we're not using our full capacities? I believe that what's happening with these new children and those that are having experiences, they're being switched on. That parts of their genetic makeup are being switched on, and we've already
How is that happening? Because some
Yeah.
folks and researchers are suggesting, and I mean this is substantive stuff, that there's energy coming out of the sun.
Yeah.
There's information in the kind of the radiant energy coming out of the sun that is in fact enabling these kind of dormant strings of DNA.
Absolutely, but there's more than that. There are those that have been activated, have had profound shifts in consciousness in the last few years.
It can happen multiple ways.
It can happen multiple ways. And one of them is a medical doctor that I've written about, where she had this activation in India, and she now brings in the frequencies to her clients, her patients, and she activates them, and they find a shift. So you've got people like her and others like her that seem to have the ability to, like in energy transfer that we have for healing, they can bring in the frequencies that are activating DNA. And so that's another way, but it's coming through music, it's coming through artwork, it's coming through cop circles. All these are frequencies affecting our perceptions. And those that are ready to be woken up are being woken up through all these multiple ways. As I say, artwork, music, and strange scripts that I'll be showing about, for example. And what's fabulous too is this strange language some of them are speaking, they call light language, comes from the stars.
I've heard it.
So it's the whole range of different things that are bringing in the frequencies from all levels of our perception that are assisting with this DNA activation. And the activation of us into, I think, our full nature, our true nature, which is then we connect to our galactic family, is what I feel is happening. Although that...
Well, it's fascinating because but almost by definition, if you go out onto the edge where the change is starting, then it's weird, it's unusual, it's strange. I mean, that's what...
For sure.
That's where you get it.
For sure.
The change never starts in the center where everybody's all solidified. It's way out on this edge. And so there's an interesting kind of tension about how you effectively navigate through this kind of Wild West kind of space that has such fascinating and interesting kind of things happening, and at the same time don't get caught up in the stuff that's all around out there. I mean, how do you kind of stay grounded in the middle of all of this?
A very good question, and you know, I'm very grateful to my scientific background, really, as a nurse and midwife, which enables me to look at it from as many levels of information as possible. And because I'm interested in the biological system, for example, and the DNA side of it, but once you start looking at information from multiple levels, you can find a baseline. And for me, it's been finding the baseline. Okay, so how many people are experiencing this? The patterns are out there. You know, I'm coming across maybe 300 or 400 that experience this. So it's part of the pattern.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean? What is actually going on? And there's some wonderful work with some scientists in Russia that have talked about the DNA being changed and altered through human language.
Right.
Now that is fascinating. So if language can alter the nature of DNA and how it's configured, so what are the star languages doing? Because that's a frequency. We're just talking frequency. And
lights,
frequency,
sounds,
music
whatever.
is frequency, affirmations are frequency. We always feel better with good affirmations. Why do we? Because it's actually affecting our DNA, and frequency is how they are altered and changed. So that's one area that we know is how it's working. So what are these star languages? Why are they coming in? Why do people feel differently? Because it's a frequency. And it's a frequency that apparently will change our DNA.
Well, everything is a frequency.
So
of course.
exactly.
I mean, it's all energy.
Exactly. That's what Nikola Tesla said. Everything is vibration and
Yeah.
frequency.
Right.
If you understand that, you understand how it all works.
Yeah, Einstein said that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So if we really want to kind of deal with the underlying problems, all you have to do is deal with the
Yeah.
energetics, and you can do that by light and sound and other kinds of things.
And it's science. It's science. You know, the quantum
It's
hologram.
science, and what it is, Mary, is it's music.
Yes.
Everything is music,
Yes.
and in the
Yes.
terms that it's configured and composed, and it has kind of patterns to it and such, and it's fascinating that Robert Coxon, who was a wonderful musician, was here, and we were talking about that, and that's kind of we came to this kind of understanding that everything is this multi, however it manifests itself, you and me and so on, are essentially these waveforms which we understand as music, and we relate to them kind of as music because they're organized and they have coherence and they have rhythm and what other kind of stuff. Well, this has been fun to talk with you today, and thanks for coming to Berkeley Springs. We very much appreciate it. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for coming back. And if you didn't see the first segment, please go listen to that. It's a fascinating conversation with Mary. And if you get a chance, come out to Berkeley Springs and sit in on these marvelous presentations that we have that are part of the Berkeley Springs Transition Talks. And you can learn about that at transitiontalks.org. And look up Mary Rodwell's book, The New Human, her brand new book. You'll find that fascinating, I'm sure. And come back and see us next time. I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and thanks for being with us on Postscript.